Obviously, to be a thriving enterprise and around for the duration, we've got to keep growing. And it's been all organic growth. And so it's like, how do we best position ourselves in the space so we're a growing, thriving company? And that could be expanding our footprint or partnering with someone. It could take a lot of different trajectories, but you look at what's going on in the space, I think you've got to make a decision. Am I going to be part of something bigger, or we're going to be the best boutique firm around?
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Connected Advisor podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Van Pelt, co-founder and CEO of Milemarker. And today I am joined by Paula Nangle. Paula is the president of Marshall Financial. And I think this is pretty interesting. She is a retired triathlete and a current yogi. Paula, thanks so much for taking time to join the Connected Advisor.
Absolutely, Kyle. Great to be here.
So I have a question I ask everybody to start the podcast off with. But before I get to that one, I've got to ask you, as a former triathlete, was there one portion of the tri that you liked more, the swimming, the running, or the biking? Was there any that you just looked forward to the most?
Oh, absolutely. The bike, for sure. That was always my strong leg.
Yeah.
The weak link was the run, for sure.
I could see, I mean, you get out and especially too, if the run is the last leg, which it is in most of these things, and you've already swam, you've already biked, and you're like, now I've got to go on sort of the slowest, most gruesome portion of that. No thanks. That doesn't sound very fun to me.
It's a testament of endurance for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, kudos to you. I think that's super cool. So the question I ask everybody to kick off all of these conversations, and this is not going to be any different, is, Paul, I've found that everybody has sort of a unique path to this industry. Some might be traditional, maybe following in family footsteps. Some maybe they came in through the side door from some other career or something along those lines. But whether the path was traditional or untraditional, I have found that everybody has what we call a money moment. And that money moment is something in your life, an event that happened, an interaction with a person, something like that, where the light bulb went off and you said, no, this is it. This is how I want to spend my career. This is what I want to do with my time. This is how I'm going to dive in. So Paula, what was your money moment?
Great question, Kyle. So I would say I came from a non-traditional route into this business. I've been in this a financial advisor now in this space for almost 20 years or about 20 years. But I started out, my first early part of my career was in the pharmaceutical industry. And I had a great job, loved it. I started out in clinical research, moved into marketing and business development. And during that period of time, started a family. So I had a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old at home. I was traveling. My husband was traveling. We're like checking our calendars, like, you going to be home on Wednesday? Like, no, we had help with us, but it got to the point where it was like, all right, something's got to give here. And I had proposed to my employer who, had work-life balance, that I work from home a few days a week because I did have a grueling commute. It was 55 miles each way. So it was just a lot. It was a lot of time. And they said no to that. So then I resigned and they said, oh, you can't do that. And I'm like, well, yeah, I can. And so I worked for them part-time for a bit. And then the management changed and they gave me the stuff that really wasn't that much, wasn't particularly fun or interesting or stimulating to do. So then there's a brief period of time where I wasn't working. And my husband came home one day. He's like, I don't care what you do, but you've got to go back to work. You're driving me crazy. So I started thinking, like, what is it that I want to do with that next chapter? And I've always had a passion for personal finance, I think, because I watched my parents struggle. So I tried to educate myself as much as possible because I was like, there's got to be a better way to do this. And then I learned about the CFP designation. Didn't really know anything about the jobs but I had like this idea. So I went to NYU, did my coursework, found some like-minded advisors who were willing to give me a opening. And that was the beginning of this next great phase of my life.
Oh, that's cool. So I love to hear that. So helping, what I hear is you had this career that was already going, you kind of pull yourself out of it, you're looking to find a new way in, but really it was mom and dad and watching how they were dealing with things that you sort of said, hey, I've got to figure out how to change the trajectory on some of this. Is that a fair statement?
That is very fair. So my mom, she was our primary breadwinner, most consistent breadwinner in the family. And she would put me to bed at night, usually a little bedtime story. I said, Paula, you can be whatever you want, but you have to be able to take care of yourself. And that's like that script runs in my head. And I think it's great advice for everyone.
I love it. So let's talk a little bit more about you being an outsider coming in sort of through the side door. So you have this career working in pharmaceuticals, things like that. And then you come into financial services industry, like culture shock. What was that like for you coming into this space? Was it any similarities to pharmaceuticals? A lot of differences? I'd love to just hear your take on that.
Yeah, I guess, you think about from a similarity standpoint, both industries are doing things to help outcomes, one for patient outcomes and the other one for more for at least in personal financial planning for people and families, having them improved outcomes. I think the biggest difference for me is, just having that personal connection with the clients versus working, more. It's, you don't really get to see the patients or, it's not like I was a healthcare provider delivering, and that's definitely not in my wheelhouse. So that wasn't my career path. I come from a family of nurses, so that wasn't for me. So I think, another similarity, both industries highly regulated. So there's a lot of compliance things. And I worked in big companies, and now I moved into a situation where working for a very small company. We're about 20 plus, employees. So it's very different than, a multinational corporation where you've got different locations and, people that you may or may not know within the company. Probably the biggest difference is going from like big company to small companies. And also just everything new coming into this was new. It's like I didn't have a background in personal finance. So,
yeah. Do you think that helped you relate with clients a little bit better, though? Because I do think for one of the challenges that I hear in our space is that the jargon can be a lot, or advisors get so comfortable using different terminology or phrases or things like that. It can be over clients' heads. And they're like, can you just talk to me in normal terms? So do you think that helps create that advantage for you? Or did you pretty quickly feel like you jumped into like the jargon train and using all of that language?
yeah, great point. Because I know when I first came in, I was like, oh, what are they talking about? We do it internally. You start to not realize that you're doing it. So we're very conscientious when we're talking to our clients to remove the jargon. You can't help yourself. Sometimes you fall into it. But I think what really helped me in that career experience was just that working in that big company. We have a lot of C-suite executives that we work with, high level executives. And so you realize, the corporate world is not a friendly place. You don't always have control over, when you want to retire or what your next position is going to be. And so I think understanding the dynamics of the corporate world, understanding the stresses and the demands of that type of environment helped me relate better with our clients, gave me perspective. Also, being a mom with young children, trying to balance a demanding job and trying to do a good job with your family. So, particularly in a male-dominated business.
Yeah. Well, and that also makes me think a little bit too. In our notes, we found you have some experience as a professor teaching fundamentals of financial planning and concepts of wealth management to people. So I'm really curious to hear where your passion for that came from. Because again, kind of coming outside of the industry, you get into it, there's clearly a passion for it, and you go, man, more people need to know this. I need to teach other people. So talk to me about that decision. Like what led you to get into teaching others about it, as well as trying to help make sure that the people inside of your firm are being conscientious about the language they're using?
So that was actually a great opportunity. So one of my early mentors was teaching in NYU at the School of Professional and Continuing Studies. And they were looking for another instructor. And so he kind of threw me into it. And I was relatively new to this arena when I was doing it. So it really forced me to make sure I knew my stuff. And I think, a lot of people came into that wanting to learn so they could better manage their own, investments and life. And they quickly came to realize, wow, there's a lot of pieces to this when you look at all of the different parts of planning. It's not just the investments, it's all of the other things that go with it. So I think, it was a great experience to help educate others who either may be going on to be advisors or trying to do it on their own.
That's awesome. Well, and a lot of the conversations we have on this show and outside of this show seem to be centered around how firms are thinking about recruiting and developing the next generation of talent. And you had the opportunity to go in and speak to college age people who are interested in this and things along those lines. What qualities would you say are good indicators that, people will be quality employees or people like that coming out of college into a wealth management firm?
From my perspective, I think someone who's got curiosity, wants to learn about other people, someone who's a lifelong learner, willing to, explore new things, asking good questions. I think having some coaching skills. The technical stuff, I feel like you can teach that to almost anyone, but I think it's more the human side and understanding that, there's all these facts and figures, but hardly ever is there a right or wrong answer. It's just like leading someone to find the right answer for them, taking in their psychological profile and dreams and hopes and fears, and just putting that all together to help them come up with the right decision. So I think it's someone who, really likes engaging with people. It doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert by any stretch of the imagination, because I'm certainly not an extrovert and I love what I do.
That's awesome. Well, and a lot of the conversations we have on this show and outside of this show seem to be centered around how firms are thinking about recruiting and developing the next generation of talent. And you had the opportunity to go in and speak to college age people who are interested in this and things along those lines. What qualities would you say are good indicators that, people will be quality employees or people like that coming out of college into a wealth management firm? Because I do think a lot of people feel that you have to be extroverted to be successful in this business or things like that. You got to be willing to be out there talking to anybody and everyone, be willing to talk to them about their money and sort of deep personal things and whatever. And, if you're an introvert, you're going, that sounds extremely draining. But there are more than a handful of introverts that we've spoken to that are very successful in this business.
Not to take this off on a tangent, but I do think, so in the RIA space, I think, it's evolved where there's more enterprise firms. And so not everyone needs to be a salesman to be successful as a financial advisor.
Yeah. Well, and that's actually a great tangent, because I think it takes me to something else I wanted to ask you about. And I don't know, I just zeroed in as we were researching for this, of this really unique experience you have of coming from outside of the industry, coming into the industry, and then going and working with the college work. And so you've kind of seen all these different angles of it. And I think this is a question I have about a lot of industries, but for ours specifically, what do you think were like the expectation gaps or, how college prepares somebody to actually come in to day one at a wealth management firm based off of what they studied, right? And so I'd be curious to just hear you riff on that a little bit of, you were in there, you were teaching these students about what it meant to work in a wealth management firm, how to be successful, about the client psychology, all of that. I love it. So they listen to that, they hear that, and now they come and they get a job at a place like Marshall or maybe one of these enterprise firms or something. What do you think the gap is between day one at a firm like that and what they learned in college?
I think the big gap really is honestly practical experience. You can learn a lot of all of our advisors are certified financial planners or working toward their designation. So, you can learn all that. And it's another skill to be able to take that body of knowledge and actually implement it and have those conversations with clients. And, I think that's why there's that 3-year experience requirement for the certified financial planner designation. At Marshall, we have a rigorous onboarding process that we take our new hires on, take them through. We have them work on their own financial plan, and they sit with a lead advisor or more a senior person for years before they're flying on their own. So I think it's experience, gaining experience, and developing the confidence to know that you can provide good advice or help people make good decisions.
This podcast is brought to you by Turncast. We make game-changing content for fintech and financial services companies. Learn more at turncast.com.
Bringing it back to running a successful financial advisory firm, and we'll talk about a couple different topics here. But that last phrase you said was making good decisions. I think that is one thing we at Milemarker see a lot for people sitting in your seat, things like that. But what does it look like right now for you to try and pull data together, to try and get information from all these different systems, to make good strategic decisions, to put Marshall on the path for success, to make sure you have the right scorecards, all of that type of stuff? Just talk to us about what that means. And as a context for that, I think what's always unique is that RIAs sort of have multiple businesses baked in. You've got the business of serving the advisors that are serving your clients, and then you've got the business of the advisors serving clients themselves. And there's all kinds of data and decisions that need to be made. So for you as the president, I know you're probably looking at a lot of data. I know your job is to make good decisions and quality decisions for the firm. How are you doing that, and how are you doing that successfully today?
Great question, Kyle. So, we have a lot of metrics that we monitor and measure. We are, I guess, interesting from my perspective, side note, is we are a 100% employee stock ownership plan company. So every year we get an evaluation done of our company so we know what it's supposed to be worth. And, so it's very data driven, understanding what our growth rate is, what's our retention rate, all those good things. I've got an amazing management team that I lean on heavily to pull all this information together and help guide us forward. But there is, you have to look at, you've got your CRM with a lot of your client data in it. We've got our data platform that, pulls a lot of information there. So it's, comes from a lot of different sources. And I know that's one of the things that Milemarker helps clients with, pulling all that complex data together.
Yeah. Because I think, with the way the industry is evolving, there's more and more sources that you have to pull from. There's all these different things. And I'm always curious to hear how people like you are doing that, and how much time it takes your team and all of that type of stuff. So that's helpful. And I appreciate you sharing some of that insight. And so you are on a great trajectory. Growth rate looks good. Marshall is growing at a good clip and a good rate. One thing I want to ask you about too, along those lines, is that we've just heard that advisors and teams, you've got this, you said kind of a smaller company than you're used to. You've got 20 people, small but mighty, but people are being asked to do more and more and more, especially advisors, for the same fees. And I think the phrase people have been using is it's not necessarily fee compression. Clients aren't coming and saying, hey, I don't want to pay the same fees, but I think some of the industry has been calling it margin compression because they're expected to offer more and more for the same amount of fee. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that as a service. And then I want to dive into something that I've seen you guys are offering as a new service in your model that we'll talk a little bit about. But from where you're sitting, are you seeing that fee compression, margin compression? What's that look like?
Yeah, so I would say we're not seeing fee compression necessarily. I guess over the last couple of years, we updated our fee schedule and actually had a small fee increase. I think we were what I call a really good value. But, so this firm was started in the 80s by Bill Marshall, who was one of the first 100 CFPs in the country.
Oh, wow.
And so as a firm, we've always been very financial planning oriented and looking at all aspects of a client's life, not just money managers. And so, I've been with the firm 15 years now, and we've been doing, I say financial planning is in our DNA. And so we help clients with, with their estate plans. We do a lot of tax projections. We don't do tax returns, but I think when I look at what's going on in the RIA space and financial advisor space, a lot of these firms are aggregating together, and maybe the same firm will prepare your return and do estate documents for you all for the same fee. We haven't gotten to that point yet. Yeah, we're definitely the quarterback on the team, but we're always looking for ways to enhance the client experience, look for ways to make their lives easier. So, I think you have to always be showing your value. What value are you bringing to me today? And it's not just about, getting good returns, which we have almost no, control over what the market does. We have no control over what the market does. All we have is this good, solid investment plan in place.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I love that because I think that's totally right. But one thing that people, it is very much in their control is their career and, what they earn and how they're growing in their career. And I think one of the services that we found when researching this is that you offer career transition services for people. And I'm guessing that results out of doing deep financial planning for them and life planning and things like that and helping them move through that. So talk to us a little bit about that and, what kind of advantage you think that provides your firm?
Yeah. So for every client, we look at, all right, what's your life stage that you're at? You've got clients who are in their, foundational years. And at that point, you don't really have any assets. All you have is your ability to make a living. And how do you maximize, your human capital? And so that's one conversation, helping them get on a good trajectory. Or you've got someone who's thinking about a position change and helping them think through, what are you leaving behind? What's your total compensation package there? What are you moving to? Do we have any conflicts of interest that we need to be worried about with your employment agreement? We've had situations where we've helped our clients negotiate a better salary or total compensation package with new employers. I think just being a thinking partner for people, helping them make good decisions and think through, because we've been through this with multiple clients, whereas as an individual, like how many times do you change jobs? It seems like I have it more frequently these days, but it's a critical component of building your wealth over the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think that you have a little bit more empathy for that as somebody who kind of went through a pretty big career transition, from what you were doing to come into this space? Does it hold a special place in your heart that you all offer this service to folks?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have my personal career transitions, but also my husband, who also worked in the pharmaceutical space. I guess it was 2009, his position was eliminated. His company was taken over, and he was basically told, you're an overpaid white male and you're not going to be around long. So it coincided with the financial crisis because he thought, oh, I'll just go get another job. And then it didn't happen, but it worked out great. But it was like another experience where, all right, well, he wanted to continue working, but they didn't want him to continue working. And at that point, like nobody was hiring for a while. And our kids were in, high school by that point, or middle school probably. And so, he took over a lot of the duties at home, so I could really focus on being an advisor. So, I take that experience and, the upheaval that it creates in your life. You're like, oh, I wasn't planning on that, but here we go. And so, you can help people understand, like, all right, well, you didn't anticipate this change, but all right, let's see what we're going to do. How do we move forward from here?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, because when it comes to financial planning, it's not always, hey, let's do an opportunistic career transition here to help you make more money and help your plan have higher chance of success. But sometimes it might not be opportunistic, but it might be a surprise career transition that planners and advisors can be immensely helpful in helping people walk through. So that's really cool.
It translates also to retirement. I think people are like looking forward to retirement, but you really need to plan and think about, like, all right, how am I going to spend my time in retirement? What am I going to do?
Yeah. I actually think maybe it gets talked about enough in our space. I'm not sure, but I really do think that's an immense, immense challenge that has nothing to do with the dollars and cents of this job. It has nothing to do with, the getting out your Monte Carlo simulations and making sure that the money's not going to run out or any of that. I mean, there's a lot of, to your point, psychology. There's a lot of humanness in the question of, what am I going to do now? I think that's a very real challenge in our industry that every single advisor is probably facing.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So I want to move into one of my favorite segments of the show. So Paula, I'm going to ask you to get out your crystal ball, and I'm going to ask you to look forward to the future of the industry a little bit. So yeah, look to the future of the industry a little bit, right? Like the tides are changing. There's things that are happening. It feels like almost every day, headlines every day about what's going on. But your job as president at Marshall Financial is kind of to position everybody well for the future. So what are you thinking about on a day-to-day basis about where things are going so that you can best position your firm for success?
Obviously, to be a thriving enterprise and around for the duration, we've got to keep growing. And we have been growing. It's been all organic growth. And so, it's like, how do we best position ourselves in the space so we're a growing, thriving company? And that could be expanding our footprint or partnering with someone, or, it could take a lot of different trajectories. But you look at what's going on in the space, I think you've got to make a decision. Am I going to be part of something bigger, or we're going to be the best boutique firm around? There's this whole world of AI is a whole new ball game. And I don't think we're going to see the obsolescence of human financial advisors. I think people are going to create human connections even more. And how do you leverage those technologies to provide an enhanced client experience and make you more efficient as a firm and still be able to deliver that personalized advice?
Yeah, I think AI might empower a boutique firm to be even more, powerful and stronger than they were. Because one of the reasons a lot of firms are consolidating is there's no denying the scale that some of these firms have. And with scale, you can offer a lot of things. You can be more efficient. You can do all of this stuff. But hopefully with AI, it makes some of that a little bit easier for firms that might want to stay boutique and rather feel that that's what's best for them rather than being forced into a bigger platform or to try and become a bigger platform.
Yeah, I think, we have positioned ourselves as the personalized financial planning. We emphasize our local, presence. Meanwhile, we have clients all over the country. But I think people initially want to be able to come into your office and meet with you face to face, and eventually they may move away, but they stay with you.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good point you make about AI may, help us be a better boutique, let us do more.
Very cool. I love it. All right. So with the conclusion of, let's put our crystal ball away, and we're going to move into the final segment of the show, which is what we affectionately refer to as the Milemarker Minute. It's a series of lightning round questions, a little bit more lighthearted, fun, opportunity to get to know you a little bit better outside of Marshall Financial or the discussion we've had. So you ready for the Milemarker Minute?
I'm going to do the best I can.
I love it. That's all we ask for. Do your best and forget the rest, Paula. Okay, so first question. If you could travel anywhere in the world that you've never been to before, where would you go?
Oh, I got a lot of places, but I would say kind of at the top of my list is New Zealand and Australia. I know it's two places, but they're relatively close together compared to where we are.
Well, close enough. If you're making the trip to one, you might as well, hop over to the other one, right? That's fantastic. Okay. I know that you have a degree in food science. So what is a dish that an untrained home cook could make for a dinner party that would impress people?
Oh, well, honestly, food science, you don't learn a lot about cooking. You learn about the science of food, which does definitely apply to cooking. I would say I try to make things that don't require a lot of attention when I have guests over so I can focus my attention on them. But one of my go-to dishes is this yummy chicken dish. I can't think of the name of it right now.
All right. Are mountains or the beach?
I think I might be turned into more of a mountain girl. I used to be a beach girl, but now I like the hiking and nature.
Yes.
Yeah.
Kindred spirits. I love the mountains. All right. I know we talked a lot about the pharmaceutical side, but one thing I love to ask people is if you weren't running a career in financial services and it was an alternate universe and Paula Nangle has a different career, what do you think that different career would be?
So it might actually be, I would be a yoga instructor.
Oh,
yeah. So I'm actually right now working on my 500-hour yoga teacher certification. So that's kind of like my thought, like what I'm going to do in my next phase as a lifelong learner.
I love it. That's awesome. Okay. And then last one, this one tends to be tough for people, but maybe you'll nail this one. But what is the best book that you have read in the last year?
I think the most recent one was The Women. It was Kristen Hanna, I think, was the author. It's a book about women who served in Vietnam and just incredible heroism and how the women were not recognized for their contributions in the Vietnam War. And I'm reading a similar book now about World War II. So,
all right. So we'll put that in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to check that out. That sounds pretty interesting.
nothing to do with being a financial advisor. And it's chicken marabella. It's a silver palette cookbook recipe.
Okay, awesome. All right, chicken marabella, everybody. That is Paula Nangle's go-to to impress a crowd. And again, we'll put that in the show notes as well for anybody who wants to listen. But Paula, you made it through the Milemarker Minute. You dropped a bunch of insights and wonderful notes and nuggets in this conversation. So thanks so much for carving out some time to come and share your knowledge and expertise with the Connected Advisor community.
Thank you, Kyle. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, that has been the most recent episode of The Connected Advisor. Please make sure to click follow or subscribe wherever you are consuming this content. And if you would be so kind as to leave us a review wherever you're listening to this, it would be immensely helpful so that more and more people can find great conversations like the one we just had with Paula. But until the next episode, enjoy every mile.